Total Screen proudly presents their official podcast, On Screen, with your hosts, Tyson Gifford and William Rohrig. Everybody, and welcome to On Screen, the official podcast of the Total Screen. My name is Tyson.
My name is Will.
And today we are celebrating our 125th episode of the podcast. And if you followed this podcast or our previous podcast, you probably know what that means. It means we are going to do a round of advocates of great entertainment. The topic this week is TV discoveries. And by that we mean not like a show that you heard about starting up and decided to tune in and watch from the very beginning. Not something that everybody was saying was great, so you tuned in and checked it out, but something that you just stumbled upon. You caught an episode, maybe you knew about the show before, but you didn't really pay much attention or anything. You caught an episode and you were like, okay, wow, I love this. And it started you on that show. And so we each picked a show that meets that criteria, and that is going to be our main topic for this podcast. We also have an On the Horizon segment where we're going to be talking about what's stuff coming up in the next 2 weeks. Normally we do 1 week, but we're taking next week off, so we're covering the next 2 weeks in the On the Horizon segment. And we have our On Beat segment with a few news stories and some trailer reactions that we're going to go over. Let's kick things off with On the Horizon. On the Horizon. On the Horizon. On the Horizon is where we talk about stuff coming up in the next week or so. In this case, as I mentioned before, in the next 2 weeks or so. And we're going to start things off with Alexander, the Making of a God. This is half documentary, half drama. And it's coming on Wednesday, January 31st to Netflix. So I'm guessing it's kind of from what I saw from the trailer, it's kind of like those old, true crime shows where they would have, the documentary aspect, but then they would have filmed, reenactments or something.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that, except instead of true crime, they're going to have filmed reenactments of battles and major historical events involving Alexander the Great.
Interesting.
So they're going to be cutting back and forth between that. That's kind of weird format wise, but interesting. Next up, we have Feud, Capote versus the Swans. This is the next installment of Feud, which is a anthology series from Ryan Murphy. It is coming on Wednesday, January 31st to FX, FXX, and the next day on Hulu. So Feud every season is a big major Hollywood or famous people feud that occurred, and it's based on based on events. And this one's based on Truman Capote, and he wrote this tell-all book about all these socialites that he was in the lives of, and basically exposed them all, and then it started a huge feud. And that's what that season is going to be about. Then on Thursday, February 1st, Clone High is coming to Max. This is the old Clone High series, if you remember, but it's back. It's returned. So if you liked Clone High back in the day, it is back with new episodes on Max on Thursday, February 1st. Then another anthology series like Feud is Genius. And this season of Genius is called MLK/X. And it is coming on Thursday, February 1st to National Geographic, and next day on both Disney Plus and Hulu. The Genius series always focuses on a really famous genius, either literal, say an Einstein, or a music composer or something like that, somebody prodigal or whatever. And this season's going to be focusing obviously on Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. And it's going to be doing both of them because they, that all happened at the same time.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a little interesting, the way they can actually kind of focus on two figures and compare and contrast, because that's obviously very fertile ground that's been tapped already, but there's plenty more to go. Then on Friday, February 2nd, Mr. and Mrs. Smith is coming to Amazon Prime. If you saw the Brad Pitt, Angelina Jolie movie back in the day, it's the same thing. It's just a TV series version of it, and this one stars Donald Glover.
Mm-hmm.
Persona 3 Reload is coming out on Friday, February 2nd to PC, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X. So anybody looking forward to that Persona 3 remake, there it is. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is coming out on Friday, February 2nd to PC, PS5, and Xbox Series X. This is the next Rocksteady game, right?
Yes. The new online multiplayer game.
Argylle is coming out on Friday, February 2nd into movie theaters. We talked about the trailer for this and a few times. I know 2 different trailers for it.
I know you're excited for this, this being the new Matthew Vaughn movie.
Yes. I love the Kingsman movies, and this is like Matthew Vaughn again. It's spies again, but it's a little bit of a different take. It's got a kind of a weird meta story kind of thing going on.
Yeah, exactly. It should be interesting. They had a really good trailer, so.
Yep. Caught in a trap. Okay. Next up, we have Curb Your Enthusiasm, which is returning for its now announced to be final season on HBO and Max. That is coming on Sunday, February 4th. If you liked Seinfeld at all and you haven't watched Curb Your Enthusiasm, it's like saying you really loved Star Wars, but you haven't seen Empire Strikes Back, because it's basically the continuation of Seinfeld.
I really love Star Wars. I only seen The Phantom Menace.
Next up, we have Foam Stars coming on Tuesday, February 6th to PS4 and PS5. It's Square Enix that made this, right?
Yeah,
kind
Square
of
Enix was
Splatoon
publishing.
takeoff.
I love Splatoon, and I've only played Foam Stars.
This is it's kind of the Square Enix version of Splatoon, basically.
It looks very Splatoon-ish, although, like, I read, like, the producer doesn't, like, want to be compared to Splatoon. He says,
you shouldn't have made a Splatoon-like.
This is very different from Splatoon.
Yes, like Mortal Kombat, I hear they really don't want to be compared to Street Fighter.
Yeah.
Alright. Wolong Final Dynasty, Complete Edition. I guess that means that's one of the things where if you buy this version, you can play it early. It is coming on Tuesday, February 6th.
Know about this.
Yeah.
But I still haven't, I bought this game, when it came out, back in, March?
Oh, this game's already out, so this is a new edition of it.
Yeah, this is a new edition, yeah, because this game and the initial edition came out February or March.
Oh, I thought this was one of those things where they release a game and you have to, if you pay for a certain version of it, you can play it early or something.
Oh, no.
This is something that's already been out. I didn't know this was already out.
I think this is like a Game of the Year edition, basically.
Except it didn't win Game of the Year in anything.
No.
But that's coming on Tuesday, February 6th to PC, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X. Then Halo is returning for its second season. Yes, I'm talking about the TV series Halo on Thursday, February 8th on Paramount Plus. Heard mostly awful things about the first season.
Okay, more helmetless Master Chief. I haven't watched it. I hear the fans don't like it very much, which kind of tells me everything I need to know about it.
Then on Friday, February 9th, Tokyo Vice returns on HBO Max. And Lisa Frankenstein comes to theaters. Both of those on Friday, February 9th.
It's funny because, I thought Lisa Frankenstein was going to be a Disney Channel movie. I didn't realize this was a theatrical film. No,
it's like some weird movie, and I think Zelda Williams is involved in it or something.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know too terribly much about it, but it's coming to theaters. Alright, so that is it for our On the Horizon segment, and now we're moving on to On Beat. On Beat is our news segment. We have a few news stories and then some trailer reactions to go over in this segment. We're going to start things off with great news, everybody. Netflix is eliminating their basic ad-free tier. Their $11.99 tier is going to be no more. That's starting in Canada and the UK in Q2 of this year. And then it's going to roll out to the rest of the world, I guess. But those on the basic ad-free tier, look forward to losing it.
They want either people paying more expensive premium subscriptions or watching ads so that they can make money from ads. And also, he hinted that they're going to raise the premium price again. They just raised it, recently. So I think the idea is they want to push as many people as possible onto, the ad tier, because advertising makes a lot of money. It's a big business. Google's entire business is centered around ads, basically, at
Facebook
this point.
Too.
And also, like, Netflix just spent a boatload of money to get wrestling, like WWE Raw, apparently, on Netflix. They made, like, a big deal with the WWE for that. It was very expensive, and I suggest that they are going to try and get that money back as quickly as possible.
Yeah, what a waste of money.
Yeah, in my opinion, I mean, because, like, I don't watch it, but, like, it kind of, like...
Even if you watch it was available on other things before. It's like, we want new stuff.
Well, yeah, this is like new stuff.
I mean, like, this is an existing property that already exists on our service. So they're paying a bunch of money so that you watch it there instead of somewhere else. And I'd rather them spend their budget on
it's going to be exclusively on Netflix now.
Yeah, I'd rather them spend their money on new things that we haven't had yet, or things that we were at risk of losing, or, you know.
Here's the thing. This reminds me, now we're just going back to cable, because, like, one of the big things that makes cable, you know, like, pricey in the first place is the carriage fees. It's mainly the fees that they spend to have sports and wrestling on cable.
Well, there's other things too, like, for example, with cable, if you have a cable subscription, you're helping to subsidize Fox News.
Yeah,
you might think that like Fox News is egregious and despise it, you're still paying them by having a cable subscription.
I mean, but sports is the big thing.
Sports is
really
super expensive.
Fox News. It's the sports and the wrestling. Like, it's the sports that's, like, really expensive. And the thing about that is, as the customer, you don't have a choice in that. You could, like, not watch any sports at all. You're still paying for that content.
Yeah, that's what I meant about, like, same thing with Fox News on those deals. You're literally paying Fox News by having a cable subscription, even if you not only don't watch it, but you vehemently despise the channel.
And now it just feels like with Netflix, we're, like, going back to that. It's like they're spending a bunch of money on, you know, WWE Raw, and they're raising prices accordingly at the expense of, like, everybody using the service, whether or not you wanted to watch wrestling on Netflix or not.
Yeah.
It feels like cable again. We're going back to cable with these streaming services, which, you know, when they came out, we triumphantly were like, yes, we can cut the cord. It just feels like we're slipping backwards, slowly but surely.
So right now, or not right now, but when this goes into effect, the tiers that are available will be the basic ad-supported tier at $6.99, the current now cheapest ad-free tier, which will be $15.49, and premium, which is $22.99.
Yeah, which is like premium is like you could do more streams at the same time, and like, oh, you get 4K.
And 4K,
because they got to gatekeep 4K behind, like, you know, an extra tier.
I think they're the only ones doing that. I think they're the only ones that can do that.
Yeah, they're the only ones doing that as far as I know, because, like, it should be, I mean, that should be like, oh, a premium, again, it's scummy, but it's like there's, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is like, they're not a scrappy startup anymore.
Nope, no, yeah.
Our next news story is that Jon Stewart will be returning to host The Daily Show through the 2024 election cycle, but only on Monday nights. So he'll be hosting every Monday night through the 2024 election cycle.
So this is an interesting situation here. Well, first of all, I see Comedy Central going back to Jon Stewart. Like, I'm happy for it because, like, I love Jon Stewart, and especially his presence during the Trump administration and, like, has been sorely missed. So I am looking forward to having him, like, at the helm of The Daily Show, even if it's once per week, you know, covering the current election cycle. But aside from that, like, it feels like it's a little bit of desperation on Comedy Central's side. We know that ever since Trevor Noah announced his exit, that there was a year-long search for, like, a new host. And apparently, like,
bunch of guest hosts and stuff, yeah.
There was a bunch of guest hosts. They were looking, you know, there are a few people in contention. Unfortunately, they did not give it to Roy Wood Jr., which I thought, like, was the obvious choice.
He was the one that really wanted it.
But, you know, after all this time, they have not been able to come to a decision on that. And so what my understanding now is, instead of just going with, like, a new permanent host, they are going to do, like, rotating hosts. And I guess now they added Jon Stewart to the mix as, like, at least for a year, a once-a-day host.
Yeah, well, because they know, like, they need that. I think, when you come to the decision that you're going to have rotating hosts, then that means you're not going to have consistency during the election cycle. And that's the biggest time for a show like The Daily Show to pull in ratings. And so this is like, okay, well, what if we could bring back Jon Stewart? Jon Stewart, of course, isn't going to come back full time as the host constantly.
No, he doesn't want to. I mean, he's been there, done that.
Yeah. So they work out a deal and they give him once a week.
And also it's like kind of like, the timing is a little bit, fortuitous too, because he did have his own show on Apple TV Plus. Apple recently canceled. So he's kind of in between projects at the moment, so I think it's also like the timing, like just kind of like lined up there too. Because I don't think if he was still doing his show on like Apple like full time that he would like really have time to do this. Who knows? But it doesn't seem like it.
Yeah, I mean it's probably what gave them the idea to contact them.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting though. I'm looking forward to it.
That's it for our regular news stories, and now we have some trailer reactions to go over. We had a few trailers this week, some that were bigger. Nothing huge, I don't think, though. But we got a trailer for Ripley, which I think this is connected to the Talented Mr. Ripley, at least like the books.
That was like the impression that I got. I've never watched that movie. I don't know like anything, or that was like Matt Damon, right? Matt Damon?
Yeah.
Was in that movie? Yeah, that was like Matt Damon, and the plot was like, he was like a con man impersonating like another man, like I think like a dead man. And like this gave me like the same vibes. And then when I saw Ripley, I'm kind of like, okay, this has to be like based on that.
If it is, and I'm not even sure if it is, but if it is, it's also fortuitous timing because there's a movie that's like currently being talked about a lot right now because it just came out recently, like in the last couple of weeks on streaming, and it didn't do huge in theaters, but it's called Saltburn. And people have been freaking out about this on social media, and a lot of the comparisons have been to the Talented Mr. Ripley.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of people have been making comparisons to it. People are like obsessed with Saltburn now, this movie, and now you have like a new Ripley TV series coming.
I haven't heard anything about the Saltburn. You are on a very different version of Twitter.
Look up Saltburn and you'll start seeing it everywhere.
Okay.
But yeah. It stars the voice control guy from the Eternals, who was also the Joker in Batman.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it stars him. But yeah, that's been getting a lot of talk on social because of there's apparently a bunch of like really shocking, crazy scenes in it that have been getting people like all flutter.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so that's Ripley. Then we got a trailer for Constellation, which is a new Apple TV Plus thing, I believe.
Yeah, it's an Apple TV Plus. It's a science fiction drama / mystery box. Don't really know what it's about. It's like,
hey, Jonathan Banks is in it.
Yeah, Jonathan Banks is in it. It's interesting because like it presents a mystery. It's about like a mother who's like, I guess, an astronaut, and she goes out into space, and the experience, something happens. It does something to her, or like I guess like weird things are happening, and she doesn't know like if she's crazy or like it's a strange phenomena. And again, like it's really mysterious. I don't know how to explain it because they want you to watch it because it's very mysterious.
It kind of has that style of there have been a bunch of movies where like, astronauts get attacked by something in space and they come back to Earth and it's like, are they really the same person or are they an alien actually? Or it kind of like presents itself a little bit like that, but I don't think that's what it is. And there might even be like a bit of a multiverse thing going on. Because there's a part where like this girl says like, oh, I like that. I'm not in that picture or something like that. And she's like, what?
Yeah, that's her daughter.
Yeah. And it's, so there's something going on that's weird. So I'm sure we'll hear about it. The Apple TV, stuff has been very like high concept, stuff. And it's mostly been pretty successful. So
there's a scene where like Jonathan Banks is talking to her and said, we had a good thing going here, but you had to mess it up. You and your ego.
And then the astronaut said, you're goddamn right.
Yes.
And then
Yeah,
they got attacked by gremlins.
Yes, exactly. That's what happens.
Yeah.
We spoiled the entire show. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, it looks interesting. It looks fascinating.
Then we got, which is probably the biggest trailer of the week, which is Avatar: The Last Airbender. We'd had a teaser for it before, but this is the first, like, full trailer for the first season of Avatar: The Last Airbender, the live-action version for Netflix.
It's hilarious, because, like, I've never watched, like, Avatar at all in my life.
Either have I.
And so I'm watching this, I'm like, yeah, this looks fine. This looks alright. I'm not, like, really, like, enticed to watch it, but, like, I can see, like, probably, like, for fans of the show, like, this looks perfectly fine. It's got Daniel Day Kim from Lost as the leader of the Fire Nation, so that's cool.
Yep.
I always love seeing Lost alums in stuff, so...
Yeah, definitely. It's also got a guy from Kim's Convenience who ended up having a small role in The Mandalorian.
Oh, yeah. I know who you're talking about now. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've heard from people that like Avatar that watch this trailer, they seem to really be hyped about it, which is interesting because there's a little bit of weird
Shyamalan movie.
Yeah. Well, that's easy.
Yeah.
But, there was a little bit of bad blood because people were concerned that the original creators of the animated series were involved in the Netflix series and departed with creative differences.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
and
I forgot about that.
Yet the trailers and stuff have been coming out and people have been watching it and going, it looks perfect, you know? So, I don't know, because like you, I haven't watched the animated series.
Right. Oh, yeah, exactly.
So, I have no idea. I mean, it looks high production value. Looks like similar production value to like One Piece, basically.
Yeah, it does.
But that is Avatar: The Last Airbender. And then the last trailer we got this week was Princess Peach Showtime. And we got to see a bunch of the costumes with a little bit more detail about what they do.
They revealed like 2 new costumes, the ninja and the cowgirl. Which is funny because like people pointed out like in the initial trailer from like the last Nintendo Direct, there was a shot of Peach looking over the doors for the different costumes, and in that shot you could see the symbols for the cowgirl and the ninja. So like they weren't like discussed in that trailer or shown, but like they were there.
It was the silhouette, and it said, "Who's that Peachamon?"
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it looks like a fun game. Looks cute. I still have questions, like, I don't know how much depth it's going to have to, like, the gameplay.
It's a variety game. It's a game where when you're controlling the different type of Peach, the different costume, it's a completely different game for each style. And that means you're probably not going to have as much depth as something that's straightforward on a single set of mechanics, you know? But
yeah, exactly.
It looks pretty good from the trailer. Like, the first trailer, I was a little bit nervous about that aspect of it. I'm excited too, because I like variety games when they're done well. But I was like a little like, oh, is this going to be like a Master of None type situation, you know? But it looks like some of the action looks actually pretty cool, so.
Yeah, oh yeah, the action stuff looks really cool.
Yeah.
It looks like it could be fun. It looks like it could.
And that is it for our trailers and for our On-Beat section, and that leaves only advocates of great entertainment.
Advocates of great entertainment.
I'm here to kill chaos, bitches!
This week on Advocates of Great Entertainment for this 125th episode of this podcast, we are doing TV discoveries. These are TV shows that you discovered by just kind of randomly happening upon an episode. And we're going to be talking about 2 different shows. We each made a pick, and we're going to talk about how we discovered these shows, what we liked about this episode of this show, and what it did for us going with the show moving forward. So we're going to start off with your pick, Will, which is Supernatural, Season 4, Episode 1, Lazarus Rising.
Yeah, this is interesting because, as the theme of this episode of the podcast suggests, I had not seen Supernatural before this episode. I kind of just, caught this, I guess, I was channel surfing, and I ended up on the CW. And I remember it said Supernatural on the TV guide. And so I'm kind of like, okay, that's interesting. I'll check this out. My first scene is a guy coming out of the ground. And then all this crazy stuff happened. This is I was watching this episode again in preparation for this podcast because it'd been a long time, and I could say I understand why I was hooked from this episode, because this is a fantastic hour of television. It hits all the right notes. It's got great characterization for the characters. The acting's on point.
It's got some humor.
It's got some humor. Jensen Ackles and Jared Padalecki are really fantastic.
So is Jim Beaver as Bobby Singer.
Jim Beaver. it's got like the lore and the mythology surrounding it. It really like pulls you in.
And a big mystery box element too.
Yes, I love that.
This was the era of mystery box. I mean, Lost was running at the same time as this. You know, it's like we were spoiled for mystery type stuff back then.
Yeah, the key element of this, and I think what drew me in the most on the initial watching is the fact that the entire episode's centered around one big mystery. This guy like gets rescued from hell, and some entity is responsible, and it's like the most powerful entity, and they spend the entire episode like building this thing up, like just hyping the shit out of it. And then like the ending, the reveal, like it doesn't disappoint. Usually like it's not something super goofy. It's like, oh, the entity that did it is an angel, which at this point in the series is like unheard of.
The aesthetic of Supernatural is on point.
Yes.
And it always has been, you know, it's always been really good. Like, they've done like a really good job. Like, it's a lower budget show, but like they make the most of what they do. I always remembered really liking like whenever somebody used the cult to kill like a supernatural enemy and like the way their like faces would flash and stuff. I always loved the effects. Just even the simple like eye effects for the demons and things. I always really, really enjoyed those aspects of it. And I think they did a really good job in Supernatural in general of just kind of saying like, okay, we want to create like a really cool effect and then finding a way to do it that doesn't look like, you know, cheesy age CG when you look at it like later now down the line, you know? And they don't have to like, you know, when you find out that this Castiel, that the guy that raised Dean from hell, when they find him and they finally show him and he reveals himself as an angel, they don't like make these big prosthetic like wings or something or do something.
I love it that
it's just a shadow.
Yeah, they have like the lightning flash and do it in shadow. And to me, like that's a very more convincing effect, very more unnerving than if they did like make these giant fake wings. Because like
what gives it sense of something huge but kind of unseen. It's almost like cosmic horror, like Cthulhu type stuff, you know?
Oh yeah.
In the sense it's like this maddening thing that you can't see, you know?
Yeah, especially like with Supernatural's depiction of angels, which I like that. I like that they went with more like cosmic version of angels. They're kind of like described originally. The pop culture angels are like, oh, they're friendly people with wings. And like Castiel, you see stuff like people's eyes are getting burned out of their skulls, and Castiel says that, you know, that's just a result of them looking on his true form. And like, there's this like these scenes like these high pitched sounds and like glasses breaking everything. And he says, oh, that was just me talking. You know, it's like, you know, like he explains like his true form is like, it's terrifying to humans.
Yeah. It's like I said before, like Supernatural just nails the aesthetic. Like they did such a good job on the aesthetic. I think from the very beginning, the idea of doing the whole brothers on a road trip and listening to classic rock while driving in an old Impala, you know, like that right from the beginning is like, okay, you're setting a clear established aesthetic. And then they only built from there.
I love how they like inject humor into this too. One of my favorite bits from the episode is like Dean, like he's fresh back from the dead and he gets into Impala. He sees like Sam installed an iPod into there and he's like, an iPod? Really? What? You're not gonna douche it up. You know, like you're supposed to take care of her, not douche it up.
I just like the part where when he encounters Bobby, because he sees Bobby before he sees Sam, and Bobby's like trying to attack him because he thinks like, oh, he knows Dean's dead, so this has got to be a demon or a shapeshifter or some other kind of creature taking his form. So he's like trying to attack him, and Dean's like, God, I'm fine. And finally it looks like Dean's completely convinced him. And then Dean's talking to him, and he kind of looks away for a second and turns back and gets a face full of holy water.
Yes.
And it's just like,
Bobby's like, I'm sorry.
He's just like, really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, really?
And it's just like a really kind of funny gag moment. Yeah.
Yeah. This episode showcases all the best elements of Supernatural. It was like just the perfect blend of action, comedy, drama, horror, all into like one blender. And watching it for the first time and not like being really familiar with the backstory, you know, what happened before this episode. It's amazing how this drew me in and like, you know, wanted me to like go on this journey with them, which is like really hard, you know, when you think about it, to like balance that, like when you're like writing like an ongoing series like this and you're kind of thinking about, okay, well, like how do we keep this accessible for like new viewers? How do we grow our viewer base, you know, without making them watch like a bunch of previous stuff? stuff, but also like, being true to like a continuity into like a storyline. And I think this like really does it really well.
Yeah.
Because like they do have the recap at the beginning, to be fair, but it's also like the stuff that happened before is like, oh yeah, like they talk about it in this episode. So you get an idea of, they tell you what's going on basically. And it spurred me to like go and get like the DVD sets for first 3 seasons and like binge up to catch up to where I was. Cause I was like, okay, yeah, this show is awesome. I want to watch all of it. I'm
going to make a little hot take here, which is that Supernatural, this part of Supernatural, when it was done by Eric Kripke, is better than The Boys, which is Eric Kripke's current show.
No, you're not wrong. I agree. I like The Boys. I really enjoy The Boys. I think The Boys has like some issues though.
I think it's a bit juvenile with its tactics. Like it's very edgelordy, and that's part of the show. Like I even hate that part of the show, but it's like I think Supernatural does a much better job of balancing the emotion and the comedy and stuff without kind of being just too in your face and ridiculous about it. While also doing things that are just completely batshit crazy,
Right. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like I said, I think this was Eric Kripke's best show so far.
Yeah. A lot better than that Revolution show too.
I never watched that, to be honest.
It was okay. It was okay, but it had a lot of problems.
Yeah, I haven't heard like rave reviews or anything around that.
It's got strengths, but it also had a lot of problems. There's a lot of stuff that just did not work.
But for me, like, this was like the perfect introduction to this. And then I think like shortly after this, they had like the Ghostfacers episode, which was like another fantastic episode.
They had so many good, like, themed episodes. Every time they'd have a trickster episode.
Oh, I love the trickster.
It was like an event. It was great. And this is like a weird show because every season they basically had no idea if they were going to get a new season at the end of each season.
Yes.
And they kept going and going, and they made it to the end of season 5. And it was a huge celebration for them because it was like, they didn't think that they were going to get past season 1, and then they didn't think they were going to get past season 2 and season 3. Every season was such a fight and such like oh my God, we got renewed. Isn't this crazy? And it was always like a last minute renewal. Then they finished the entire storyline in season 5. Like the entire storyline that Eric Kripke had set up, they completed it all, finished everything, and it goes another 10 years.
Yeah. Eric Kripke did leave the series after season 5, after he finished like his storyline. Yeah, but then it went on an extra 10 years.
Yeah, some people like the whole show. Some people will go like, oh, I only watched the true Supernatural, the first 5 episodes.
Yeah, I will say like the rest of the series is a bit more uneven than the first 5, but there's like a lot of great stuff in the back half of the series too. I think like people like dismiss.
Here's the secret. Here's how you can enjoy the last 10 seasons of Supernatural after completing the first 5. Okay, ready for this?
Uh-huh.
Consider the entire last 10 seasons just a big epilogue.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just like hey, you had this really good story, this 5-season story arc with these characters you love, and now, just hang out with them some more.
Yeah, exactly.
That's basically for 10 more seasons, for twice as long.
The continued adventures. Like, that's always how I thought of it, yeah.
Exactly. It's like, do not consider everything a build-up to what happens at the end of Supernatural season 15. Do not consider any of those seasons after that to be kind of like, oh, everything's led to this. Like, everything led to the end of season 5. Everything after that is just like continued adventures. Like you said, it's just more fun stuff.
I am kind of surprised though, despite the fact that they kept renewing this show and that made it to 15 seasons, they couldn't make like any like planned spin-offs happen.
They did one full spin-off that came out, but it got canceled after 1 season.
Oh, did they actually air the Winchesters? Okay.
Yeah, the Winchesters aired, and they did 2 backdoor pilots, I think.
Yes.
Which for those who don't know, a backdoor pilot is like an episode of a show, but it's really like a new pilot for a new show, but it's like it's piggybacking off of an old show. There was an episode of Supernatural where they had they went to the city and there were these 2 clans of werewolves that were kind of at war with each other. It's kind of like doing a Romeo and Juliet type thing, I think, with the Capulets of the Montagues, except they were both werewolf clans or something. That was one of them that they tried to do. And then another one that they tried to do, was about actually existing characters that were in the series before. There was a sheriff character that, had 2 adopted daughters that played a part through
Yeah,
several seasons.
the werewolf one was supposed to be Bloodlines. That was supposed to be about these feuding, like, families of, like, monsters in Chicago. And the whole episode was like, the whole episode was about Sam and Dean going to, like, a monster club in Chicago and, like, getting involved with, like, the characters who were supposed to be the main figures of, like, this planned spinoff. It wasn't a good episode. It was like, I did not like that episode at all.
Yeah. It's funny because they did some other, like, kind of one-off episodes that weren't meant to be backdoor pilots that would have been much better backdoor pilots.
Oh,
Including another one. They did one with another werewolf character where it ended with the werewolf character. Like, it was basically the whole episode was them, like, missing this character. Like, they were trying to, like, hunt a werewolf, and this character got turned into a werewolf by the one they were trying to hunt, and then they were, like, trying to track her, but it was mostly focusing on her kind of side of things, and it was actually kind of interesting.
That was a great episode.
Because she hit the road and was like trying to kind of do something on her own. That was not a backdoor pilot. That would have been a better backdoor pilot.
That would have been much more interesting. If they did like something centered on her character.
It was just a much more interesting episode.
She just disappears from the franchise after that. So
they also did something with DJ Qualls. Is it DJ Qualls?
Yes.
He was on that show. I got the last name wrong. I'm not sure, but he had a character, and his character became a werewolf at one point in the show.
Yes, I remember
and
that.
they went back to him a few times or something, but I'm like, that could have also been like an interesting like take with a likable character that we already know and care about, and then could have gone on from there. There's a few characters that they did that with, where they had a character on for a while, and then they got rid of the character, usually by killing them. And it's like, if you didn't kill them and did something just slightly different, you could have had an interesting spinoff. But they tried it twice with these other ones, and it just did not work. Then they did the Winchesters, was written from the beginning as like a new show. That didn't last. And now apparently they're trying to like just do old Supernatural again, but I don't know how that works continuity-wise. I guess they're just gonna say fuck it and do it anyways.
Oh, weird. Okay.
So that they're trying to do one with Sam and Dean again, because, once I think Walker, Texas Ranger got canceled, which was Jared Padalecki's new show, and then it freed him up, and then now they're talking about doing a return to Supernatural with the main two characters, even though we kind of got as much out of them as we can, I think. So I don't know how I feel about that, but it's interesting the way they've chosen to do that.
It's interesting.
But that's Supernatural, and now we're going to talk about my TV discovery. Mine's a bit of an older show, but a very beloved show, and a show that you can watch just kind of any random episode of and enjoy, because it is a sitcom, and every episode goes back to stasis, as sitcoms do.
Yeah, there's no real continuity to the show.
Yeah, so my pick is Married with Children, and I'm talking about Season 2, Episode 20, Just Married with Children, and this episode's from 1988. I don't know if I saw this in 1988 or if I saw it later. I do not think I saw this when it originally ran. I think I saw this as a rerun.
I gotta be honest.
The show wasn't in syndication, but it was a rerun.
My memories of 1988 are very vague at this point. So I remember, like, I think at least being aware of this show. Don't really know what else. Like, I couldn't tell you, like, if I watched a specific episodes, or if I just saw commercials on Fox. No clue. Again, very vague memories going that far back.
So this was, when I saw this, it was a rerun, I believe, but it was before it was in syndication. So it wasn't like when it was just replaying on other channels or something like that. This was like a summer rerun. Remember those? Remember when summer meant reruns?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely remember watching Married with Children when it was, like, still airing. Like, it aired, like into the 90s. I'm not exactly sure when it ended. Probably, like, 93, maybe.
I think it went 11 seasons, and 88 was season 2, so we're talking another 9 years after that, so like 96? Something like that.
That's probably more accurate, yeah. Yeah, 97 it ended. Okay.
Yeah,
so I mean, I remember watching it during the 90s at least. I just couldn't tell you like which one was the first episode I watched, so it's kind of impressive that you remember that.
I have like an oddly pristine memory of this, of my experience. I remember coming home. I was with my mom and my sister. I don't remember where we were or what we were doing, but we were coming home very late. We might have got back in town from a trip. It might have been I have no idea what it was. But I remember us coming home late. And I think, I was a kid at the time. I would have been like 9 or 10 years old, I think, when I saw this. And I didn't watch anything kind of that mature and didn't really watch primetime TV at all, really. At the time. I was young and wasn't basically allowed to. And I came home with my mom. This was after my parents had been separated. So it was just my mom, my sister, and I. We came home. We were really tired, but we were in that kind of state where you can't you can't go to sleep yet, but you're tired. So you just want to laze back and watch something. And we just couldn't go to sleep yet. We were we weren't at that mindset yet. So we sat down and we turned on the TV and this episode came on and it was I don't know, maybe a couple minutes into it. It was about at the beginning of the game show part of the story in this episode, which is most of the episode. Yeah, and I remember watching this and just laughing my ass off and just being completely I'd never seen anything like it before. I mean, I was, like I said, I was 9 or 10 at the time. So I'd only watched basically family programming at that point. I think this might be the first I'd probably caught random bits of an episode of Cheers or something here or there, but it was always boring to me. It never did anything exciting. Married with Children was very different because it was, in a way, it's kind of like children's programming or family programming because it's kind of cartoonish.
It is cartoonish. It's interesting because, going back to, this episode in particular, Married with Children was, when it came out, was pretty radical. It was rude, it was crude,
it had
sitcoms.
Attitude.
Well, sitcoms, were not like this at the time, and it really, Married with Children is a parody of the American sitcom. It was satirizing sitcoms as, a concept. In a way,
it was kind of a follow-up to All in the Family, which also had a similar reputation.
Yeah, but All in the Family was, socially conscious. This is more, concerned with, being a parody of the traditional American sitcom than it's, having, any kind of real social message to it.
Yeah.
All in the Family was, very much about being socially conscious and pushing a socially conscious message about just, being respectful of other people, especially of, other races and stuff. I can't say the same thing about Married with Children. Sorry.
It had little bits in it, but that wasn't its core. That's what it
wasn't
its
its
going
core.
for.
Yeah, again, the core was, it was just mocking the idea of sitcoms.
Yeah, it was mocking a lot the idea that, that sitcoms represented what families are actually like.
Yeah,
and Married with Children was actually, as cartoonish as it was probably a more accurate representation of what a lot of families are like than what sitcoms had previously shown us.
So this show was one big parody. And it's funny too, because this was outrageous at the time, but I was watching the episode that you brought up for this, and I was thinking this stuff is incredibly tame by today's standards. This barely registers now.
Some of it, but then there's other parts
funny,
you're watching and you're this could not air, this would not be in a show that now. They wouldn't be able to do this in a show now.
Yeah, no,
the fat woman on the bed thing,
Yeah. Oh, they love to do fat jokes on the show constantly. This show was not politically correct.
No, far from.
Even for the time it aired, it was not especially now, if social media existed back then, yikes.
There were campaigns to get this show taken off the air and stuff.
Yes.
There were.
The show, pissed a lot of people off, and it would still, but yeah, there's unfortunate things, there was that, there was, the show, this episode had a parody of, Pat Sajak and Vanna White, or Pat Sajak, for the game show host here, with the Pat Sajak figure was, very, very, cynical, and just, seemed like he just hated being there, and then, the Vanna White was just this really stupid woman who was just there because she was pretty.
And another really aspect of it that
played
would
up
not
how
be today is
she was.
Not just how stupid, but how slutty.
Yes.
They played it up like she was a mindless slut, and that's the kind of thing that doesn't really go now as much.
Yeah.
We have stupid characters, but don't often.
It's funny
do
because
a lot of slut
the
shaming.
actress who plays Marcy was one of the writers on the show. She's also a big feminist too.
Yeah.
which is kind of interesting there, you know.
I remember, this is a different episode of Married Children, but I remember when they did the episode where they introduced her cousin, and her cousin was gay, and it was like a big deal at the time because, you know, Amanda Burse, who plays Marcy Rhodes, is gay.
Yes.
And so she played her cousin, and it was like basically her chance to kind of portray herself in a sense, or to like represent like her own people, her like, you know, as a lesbian. And, I remember that being like a really big deal at the time. And I think this was like pre-Ellen coming out on her show.
Yeah. It was still like early days for like the acceptance of LGBTQ people in popular culture.
Yeah, so they did some stuff, you know, but like that wasn't the core. They did some commentary stuff, but it wasn't the core of the show. The core of the show was more like making fun of how ridiculous things are in entertainment, how ridiculous sitcoms were and stuff, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
The idea is like, this is a family, but they hate each other.
I gotta say, like watching this is definitely not my favorite episode of Married with Children. The show, thankfully, or at least to my memory, was a lot better than this. This episode was kind of like one note. It was just, they go on a game show and Al gets consistently tortured while Peg racks up prizes, and it ends with Peg getting a car and like Al being completely like destroyed.
I think peak Married with Children was probably about halfway through its run. Yeah. Which is the case for a lot of things. I mean, like, look at The Simpsons, for example.
It's just like one note, like this episode. It's just one note. It's like, it's a very simple setup and drive, and they don't like do anything like really creative with it. Like, there's no like twist. The biggest twist is like Marcy and Steve come in at the end, but they don't like really do anything.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought like it was a weak episode looking back.
But like, what I was saying is that if you look at a show like The Simpsons, for example, everybody knows after a certain point that show went way downhill. And so any of the new seasons are pretty rubbish compared to like classic Simpsons. But the other thing is that when people talk about classic Simpsons, they're not talking about season 1 and season 2. They're talking like season like 4 through 10, something like that, you know?
Yeah.
It's like in a range there. It took a while for the show to kind of find its voice. And then once it found its voice, it was like, oh, this is amazing. And it went for a while, and then it just kept going too long. Yeah. Married with Children is similar. Obviously, Married with Children isn't still running like The Simpsons is.
No.
But, Married with Children is similar in that sense, that it took a while to really find its footing. And then once it found its footing, it was really, really, really good. And then it kind of started to go downhill before it ended, you know?
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
So it's similar in that way. Like, that's Married with Children's trajectory. But the reason this episode, besides just being the first episode of Married with Children, and like I alluded to, this is probably the first like adult sitcom or like sitcom made for adults that I had seen, or like that I had taken enough notice to even really pay attention to. So that's kind of a big part of the impact for me. Another part of it is just the concept of the game show where you torture the people that you're supposed to love.
Yeah.
And that,
it's like
that
this weird, like, sadistic,
is something that stuck with me, because when I was I graduated high school in 97, and when I went into my community college in like 97, 98, 99, around there, I was in a video production class because I was studying like film and video and editing and all that stuff. And, I was in a video production class, and one of the things we had to do was a project where we had to control something that was done as if it was like a live broadcast. So they had like a room where you would sit, and they had a bunch of TV monitors and a fader board, and you could be the technical director and the director of your own episode of television, and you wear a headpiece, and you had to talk to people in the camera room and talk to the different camera people and tell them what shots you want, and then cut to those shots. And you're basically serving as the creative director for your own little projects. So I distinctly remember 3 of those projects, because, you know, you're doing one as the technical director. That's your project, but you're also helping everybody else make theirs. And so you're taking on different roles. So I remember 3 specific, ones that I was involved in. One was mine, obviously, the one that I created. And that one was basically a ripoff of this episode. My game show was called Is It Worth It? And it was basically the idea of like a Family Feud type show where they'd have the whole family on, and it was just like you had to like torture and kill your family members to win prizes. And that's how long that idea stuck with me, that like, you know, some 10 years after this random episode that, as you mentioned, isn't even one of the best episodes of the show, this became my project for a class. Like, I was like, like, oh,
Yeah.
I want to do this.
Like, you just had, like, the idea in your head, and, like, the game show concept from this episode was so absurd that it stuck with you, and it influenced you years later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. The other two projects that I was involved in, just because I hinted at them, it's off topic, but just because I hinted at them. One, it was like a Jerry Springer type show, and I played a woman wearing a dress, but I had like a beard, and I didn't shave it, and I was wearing my regular clothes under what was basically a sheet wrapped around me to look like a dress. It was really bad. And then the third one, I don't even remember what the production was, but it was the first time I ever saw somebody have a real epileptic seizure.
Oh, damn. That's scary.
And I remember how terrifying that was.
Yeah, that's a scary experience.
Yeah, one of the guy that was running that one, his friend he had a friend that was there that wasn't in the class, but he came into the class to be like an actor on his project, and he just started sloping in his chair and then started shaking, and I just remember how terrifying it was, and I was completely frozen. And I remember I was like controlling one of the cameras, and one of the people on the other camera like just jumped right past me and like ran down the hall to get help, and I just couldn't do anything. I was just like completely frozen on the spot. I had no idea what to do.
I remember like my dad having a seizure when I was like 5. I must have been like 5 years old or something, maybe even younger. And just like that being like the scariest thing I'd ever seen in my life. Never happened again. But yeah, that was terrifying. Thankfully. Yeah. Like, wow.
Yeah, it was a really terrifying kind of formative memory, for me, like the first time experiencing something like that. And just kind of like, I'd seen it in a TV show or something like that, or a movie that, or they dramatize it and stuff.
Seeing stuff in like in a movie or something is like,
it's just not the same.
It doesn't compare to like seeing something, in real life. Yeah.
Yeah, it's traumatizing. It's scary as hell.
Exactly.
And,
was the guy come out okay?
As far as I know, he came out okay from that situation. I have no idea what happened to him since then. He wasn't somebody that I was even, he wasn't even like an associate of mine. Like he wasn't in the class. He was like a friend of a friend of a friend kind of thing. And I don't know what's happened to him since, but I know he went to the hospital and was recovering and stuff.
Yeah. At least he recovered. It's getting heavy on the podcast. we need to lighten the tone.
It's off topic, but I just wanted to kind of bring that up as like, because it's, those memories are kind of tied together for me. And that's a lot of what, when we do advocate segments like this, a lot of it is based on the idea of like how these things affected us at the time and the way they affect our memories and the way they affect, our formation of ideas and concepts and things. Like I said, when I picked my project and I wanted to do a game show like this, I did that because this had such an impact on me, that it had, not the best episode of Married Children, still massive impact on me for some reason. And, that's what I wanted to kind of express there. So, yeah. But that's, Married with Children, just Married with Children. It's still a funny episode, I think. It's very politically incorrect by today's standards in a lot of areas.
It's a funny episode. It's just like very basic in its setup. It doesn't like really have a punchline.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a one note like type joke because like there's no real punchline to it. It's like, Al gets tortured for 30 minutes. That's it.
Yeah, pretty much. And it's funny. And I think a lot of that's also down to Ed O'Neill's performance.
Oh, Ed O'Neill is fantastic. Again, he sells it.
Yeah, Al Bundy is a legendary sitcom character for a reason, and that reason is Ed O'Neill. So, really, loved Married with Children. There was a time where I was watching like 5 episodes a day. They were like rerunning it, I think on like TBS or something constantly, like late at night. And I would just like randomly tune in. Like I'd be up late at night and I'd be like, I'd finished playing a video game or something and just like, what's on TV? I'd flip it on and put on Married with Children and just watch for like 2 hours.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So that would happen quite frequently. And I'm not talking about when it was airing. I'm talking like way later.
Yeah.
After, I'm talking like maybe
syndication
20 years ago, in the early 2000s or something. I'd be like watching reruns constantly of this show. So it was fun to kind of go back and watch it because I haven't actually seen it in a long time. So, but yeah, check out Married with Children. as Will said, this isn't the best episode, but there's some really good ones up.
It is a great show, in my opinion. Just like, not this episode, but like, you know, again.
The car wash episode, you ever see that one?
Yes.
Car wash episode's great. The one where, Peggy's family, or Peggy's mom visits and stays with them for a while.
Yeah. I mean, there's all kinds of, you can go on forever with that. So.
Crazy. But,
yeah,
that's Married to Children and Supernatural. So we talked about, again, Supernatural Season 4, Episode 1, Lazarus Rising, and Married to Children Season 2, Episode 20, Just Married with Children. You can check out Supernatural on Netflix and Married to Children on Hulu. So you can do that if you want to check those out if you haven't already. So check out those because they're both good shows. Thank you, everybody, for listening. You can follow me on Twitter. I am at Tyson Gifford. You can follow Will. He is at Voxel Hero. You can check out our Facebook page, our Twitter accounts, our everything like that. It's all available if you go to our official website, thetotallscreen.com. And if you open up a container story for any of the podcast episodes, scroll down to the last paragraph. You'll see all the links to all of our different social accounts, to the RSS feed for the podcast. It's all there. Anything you need related to this podcast is there. So check that out. You can also subscribe to the podcast through your favorite podcast find of choice like Apple Podcasts or Pocket Casts, and the entire backlog of this podcast as well as other content is available on our YouTube channel. So thank you everybody for listening. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the OnScreen podcast, the official podcast of The Total Screen. Visit our website at thetotallscreen.com. This podcast can be found on any major podcast client, including Pocket Cast and Apple Podcast. The entire backlog of this podcast and other content can be found on our YouTube channel.